Hello, dreamers. I'm the Success Dreamer. These stories are here to inspire you while you fall asleep. If they bring you peace and motivation, please like the video and subscribe. Now, breathe deeply, relax, and enjoy the story. Tonight, as the rain falls softly outside your window, let me tell you a story. This is not just any story. It is a story of success. A story of a little girl who was born in poverty, endured unimaginable hardships, and grew to become one of the most influential women in the world. This is the journey of Oprah Winfrey. As we begin the story, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always amazing to see our viewers from every corner of the world. Oprah Gail Winfrey was born on January 29, 1954, in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, a small rural town where dirt roads wound between fields and life moved to the rhythm of the seasons. Her early years were spent with her grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, in a modest wooden home without running water or electricity. In winter, the air inside was crisp in the mornings until the wood stove roared to life. In summer, the heat clung to the walls and wrapped itself around her like a heavy blanket. Though they had little, her grandmother gave her something priceless: discipline, faith, and the love of reading. By the age of 3, Oprah could read aloud from the Bible, standing before the congregation in her Sunday dress, sometimes hand-stitched from potato sacks. Her small voice carried with a clarity that made people pause, look up, and listen. At home, evenings were often lit by oil lamps, the smell of the flame mingling with the faint scent of rain drifting through the open windows. Oprah would read aloud, her voice weaving through the sounds of the night. Her grandmother insisted that she use her time wisely, chores first, learning second, and idleness never. It was strict, but it instilled in her a sense of purpose. Church was where she truly began to discover her ability to connect with people. She didn't just recite scripture, she delivered it with feeling, as if she understood the meaning behind every word. The nods, smiles, and quiet amens from the congregation planted seeds of confidence deep within her. Life, however, was far from easy. Poverty was constant, and the opportunities for a young black girl in the segregated South were painfully limited. But even in those hard times, small moments left lasting impressions. The patter of rain on the roof, the flicker of candlelight while reading, the steady encouragement in her grandmother's voice. These beginnings, humble as they were, became the foundation of her strength. The little girl in the small Mississippi church could not yet imagine the world she would one day influence, but the rain outside seemed to whisper that something greater was coming. Oprah Winfrey's life began with challenges that would have broken many. Born in rural Mississippi in 1954 to a teenage single mother, she spent her earliest years in poverty, wearing dresses made from potato sacks and often going without enough to eat. When she was just 6 years old, her mother moved her to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in search of a better life. But the reality was far from better. The neighborhood was dangerous, and her home life was unstable. For years, Oprah was shuttled between her mother and her grandmother, each move disrupting her sense of security. Yet amid the chaos, there was one constant: her love for speaking and performing. At just 3 years old, she was reciting Bible verses in church, leaving the congregation stunned by her confidence and charisma. By the time she was 9, Oprah had endured unspeakable abuse from people she trusted. The pain and isolation nearly consumed her. She began acting out, running away from home, and falling behind in school. But her life took a crucial turn when she went to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Nashville at the age of 14. Vernon was strict, but he valued education above all else. He set a rule: Oprah had to read a book each week and write a report on it. At first, she resisted, but soon, the power of words began to shape her mind and spirit. Books became her escape and her inspiration. She devoured works by Maya Angelou, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Black leaders who showed her what was possible beyond the walls of poverty. Her academic performance soared. Oprah joined her high school speech team, where her gift for storytelling shined. She won oratory contests, earning recognition that would open doors she never imagined. When she was just 17, she entered the Miss Black Tennessee beauty pageant. She didn't just win, she also caught the attention of a local radio station, which offered her a job reading news on the air. That moment marked the beginning of a lifelong connection between Oprah and her audience. She wasn't just reading headlines, she was speaking to people's hearts. And for the first time, she began to see a future that was bigger than her past. This chapter of Oprah's life is a reminder that education is more than grades or diplomas. For her, it was a lifeline, a way to rewrite the narrative she had been given. And it all began with a father who refused to let her settle for less. Oprah's early years in media were far from glamorous. After working in local news in Nashville, she was offered a co-anchor role at a Baltimore TV station. She thought it was her big break, but instead, it became one of her toughest tests. The fast-paced, rigid style of evening news didn't suit her warm, empathetic personality. Producers criticized her appearance and delivery, saying she didn't fit the image they wanted. Eventually, she was removed from the anchor desk and reassigned to a daytime talk show. To many, that would have felt like a demotion. But for Oprah, it was a turning point. Hosting People Are Talking, she discovered her true gift, connecting deeply with guests and audiences. She wasn't trying to be perfect, she was being real. Her conversations were raw, emotional, and genuine, and viewers loved it. Ratings began to climb. She had stumbled upon the secret that would define her career. Authenticity was her superpower. In 1984, opportunity knocked again. Oprah was invited to host a struggling morning talk show in Chicago called AM Chicago. At the time, it was losing badly to its rival, The Phil Donahue Show. But within months of Oprah taking over, the ratings skyrocketed. Her warmth and relatability drew in viewers from all walks of life. By the end of the year, AM Chicago was #1 in its time slot. The show's success caught the attention of a national audience, and in 1986, AM Chicago was rebranded as The Oprah Winfrey Show. It began broadcasting across the country, turning Oprah into a household name. She wasn't just another talk show host, she was a voice people trusted. She could make them laugh, cry, and think, all within the same hour. But Oprah wasn't content to simply enjoy the fame. She saw an opportunity to redefine what a talk show could be. Instead of gossip and sensationalism, she wanted to create conversations that mattered, stories of courage, survival, and hope. Over time, The Oprah Winfrey Show became a platform for empowerment, helping millions believe they could rise above their struggles. Behind the scenes, however, Oprah faced constant pressure. The industry was dominated by men, and the idea of a Black woman leading the most watched talk show in America was almost unheard of. She had to fight for creative control, negotiate fair contracts, and protect her vision from being watered down. But her persistence paid off. Not only did she keep control of her show, but she also began laying the foundation for her own media empire. What had once been a setback in Baltimore was now a launch pad for greatness. Oprah had turned rejection into redirection, and in doing so, she was rewriting the rules of success. By the time The Oprah Winfrey Show launched nationally in 1986, Oprah had already learned one of life's most important lessons sometimes. The doors that close on you are the ones that push you toward your real purpose. Now, with millions of eyes watching, she was determined to make the most of her moment. The early episodes proved she wasn't just another talk show host reading from cue cards. She brought empathy into every conversation, treating guests as if their stories truly mattered, because to her, they did. Whether she was interviewing celebrities, everyday heroes, or people facing extraordinary challenges, Oprah created a space where truth could be told without shame. That honesty was magnetic. Viewers didn't just watch her show, they felt a connection with her. But Oprah wasn't simply content to deliver great television. She was thinking bigger. She recognized that her growing influence was a powerful tool, and she wanted control over how it was used. In 1988, just 2 years after her show went national, she made a move that stunned the industry. She founded Harpo Productions. This was more than a business decision. It was a declaration that she would own her work, her image, and her future. Owning Harpo meant she could shape the direction of her show without being dictated to by executives. She could choose which stories to tell, which voices to amplify, and which conversations were worth having. This freedom allowed her to take the program in a new direction, one that focused less on sensationalism and more on empowerment, education, and healing. Behind the scenes, Oprah was relentless. She studied the business side of television, learned how syndication worked, and negotiated deals that gave her unprecedented creative control. Her instincts were sharp, but her work ethic was sharper. She was often the first to arrive and the last to leave, personally reviewing segments, refining the format, and ensuring every episode carried her unique touch. By the late 80s and early 90s, the results spoke for themselves. The Oprah Winfrey Show was not only #1 in its category, it was redefining what a talk show could be. Her book club could turn authors into bestsellers overnight. Her interviews sparked national discussions, and her generosity, both on and off the air, became part of her brand. The girl who once read Bible verses by lamplight in a small Mississippi church was now one of the most influential women in America. She had broken barriers, defied stereotypes, and proven that authenticity could be a business strategy as powerful as any marketing plan. Still, Oprah knew this was only the beginning. She had a bigger vision, one that extended beyond television screens and into the hearts, minds, and lives of people around the world. The stage was set for her next evolution, and she was ready to take it. The Oprah Winfrey Show was no longer just a rebranded talk program. It was a revolution in daytime television. From the very first syndicated episode, Oprah brought something different to the screen, a genuine, disarming warmth that made guests open up and audiences feel safe to share in their vulnerability. In an era when many talk shows thrived on sensationalism, Oprah offered something rare: empathy. She didn't just ask questions, she listened, and in that listening, she made people feel seen. Whether she was talking to a Hollywood star, an everyday mom, or someone sharing a deeply painful story, Oprah met them with the same level of humanity. Her show quickly shot to the top of the ratings, beating established hosts who had dominated the airwaves for years. But for Oprah, success wasn't about simply being number one. She began using the platform to address issues other programs avoided: racism, domestic violence, poverty, mental health. Millions of viewers found not only entertainment, but also life lessons. Behind the scenes, Oprah worked tirelessly. She reviewed every segment, paid attention to audience feedback, and pushed her team to constantly improve. Her famous Oprah touch wasn't an accident. It was the result of preparation, intuition, and the courage to trust her instincts. By the end of the 1980s, she had become a household name in America. Her audience wasn't just watching her, they trusted her. Viewers tuned in daily not just for celebrity gossip, but for moments that felt personal and transformative. It was clear that Oprah was no longer just a talk show host. She was becoming a cultural force. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Her reach was growing, her message was resonating, and she was about to take her influence far beyond the TV studio. The stage was set for her to redefine what a media personality could be and change the very definition of success itself. By the early 1990s, Oprah Winfrey was more than just a television host. She was a cultural phenomenon. Her show was syndicated in over 100 countries, and her influence reached into millions of homes every single day. But in 1993, she would take on what became one of the most iconic moments in television history, an exclusive interview with the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. At the time, Michael had become an almost mythical figure, adored, yet shrouded in mystery. He rarely spoke to the press, and when he did, it was usually under carefully controlled circumstances. So when Oprah announced that she would be speaking to him live from his Neverland ranch, the world paid attention. Over 90 million people tuned in globally, making it the most watched interview in television history at the time. As the cameras rolled, Oprah walked through the whimsical grounds of Neverland, past its private zoo and amusement rides, and into Michael's world. The conversation touched on his childhood, the pressures of fame, and the pain behind the public image. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Michael spoke about the emotional scars left by his father's strict discipline and the loneliness that came with superstardom. Oprah's calm but empathetic questioning created an environment where Michael could open up like never before. For Oprah, this wasn't just an interview, it was a demonstration of what made her style unique. She didn't sensationalize or push for scandal. Instead, she gave space for her guests to be human. This approach not only earned her the trust of celebrities, but also solidified her reputation as the go-to interviewer for deep, meaningful conversations. That same year, her influence expanded beyond talk television. She began using her platform to address topics like child abuse, domestic violence, and AIDS awareness, issues that mainstream media often avoided. She made it clear that her show wasn't just for entertainment, it was a tool for social change. Behind the scenes, Oprah's business sense was as sharp as ever. She continued negotiating deals that allowed her creative freedom and ownership, ensuring that every project she touched carried her voice and values. The Michael Jackson interview marked a turning point. It proved she could draw the world's attention to a single moment, not just by chasing headlines, but by creating them with authenticity and respect. It was a reminder that Oprah Winfrey was no longer simply a talk show host. She was a global force. By the mid-1990s, Oprah Winfrey had already conquered daytime television, but something inside her began to stir. She realized that while her show was wildly popular, it often followed the same formula as other talk shows: sensational stories designed to grab ratings. It bothered her. Oprah wanted to use her platform not just to entertain, but to uplift, educate, and inspire. This was not a small decision. The TV industry thrived on drama, scandals, and controversy. Moving away from that meant risking ratings and potentially alienating viewers who had grown used to tabloid-style segments. But Oprah was determined. In 1994, she made a bold shift in The Oprah Winfrey Show, cutting back on exploitative topics and focusing instead on meaningful conversations, discussions about personal growth, spirituality, education, and social issues. The change was not just a branding move, it was deeply personal. Oprah herself was going through a period of introspection, questioning her legacy and the kind of energy she wanted to put into the world. She began inviting thought leaders, authors, and spiritual teachers to her show. This was when viewers first met experts like Dr. Phil McGraw and authors such as Gary Zukav, whose book The Seat of the Soul became one of Oprah's favorites. The audience's response was powerful. Many longtime viewers found the new format more inspiring and life-changing. And while some critics thought the ratings would suffer, the opposite happened. Oprah's authenticity drew even more loyal fans. She was proving that substance could be just as magnetic as spectacle. But Oprah's evolution wasn't limited to her show. Around the same time, she began stepping more fully into philanthropy. Having once been a child in poverty, she was deeply committed to improving opportunities for others. She launched initiatives to fund scholarships for underprivileged students and supported programs focused on literacy, mentorship, and empowerment. One of her earliest major philanthropic projects was the creation of the Oprah Winfrey Scholars Program at Morehouse College in Atlanta, helping young men pursue higher education. Oprah's giving wasn't only about money, it was about involvement. She would personally meet some of the students she helped, listen to their stories, and encourage them to dream bigger. In interviews, she often said, "To whom much is given, much is expected," a principle that guided her approach to success. By the end of the 1990s, Oprah had not only redefined her show, but had begun redefining her role in the world. She was no longer just a television host. She was a cultural force using her influence to push for a more conscious, compassionate society. The decisions she made in this period laid the foundation for the global impact she would have in the decades to come. In 1996, Oprah Winfrey sat in her office, holding a book that had moved her deeply. She had always loved reading. Books had been her escape, her safe place, her way of imagining a life beyond poverty and hardship. That day, she decided she wanted to share that experience with the millions of viewers who tuned into her show. When she announced the creation of Oprah's book club, no one predicted the ripple effect it would create. The idea was simple. Each month, she would recommend a book that had touched her soul. But the impact went far beyond mere reading lists. Suddenly, novels by relatively unknown authors were selling millions of copies. Writers who had been struggling for years found themselves catapulted into the literary spotlight. It wasn't just about selling books, it was about connection. Viewers didn't just read the stories, they talked about them, related to the characters, and saw pieces of themselves reflected on the page. It became proof that a single voice, when used with authenticity, can influence the world in powerful ways. Oprah didn't choose books to impress critics. She chose them because they resonated with her on a human level. And in doing so, she reminded people everywhere that the right story can arrive at the right time and change the way we see our lives. It showed that even in a fast-paced, noisy world, the quiet act of reading could still bring people together. Over the years, the club would become a cultural touchstone, transforming book sales and inspiring countless people to pick up a novel for the first time in years. More importantly, it reignited a sense of curiosity and wonder, a reminder that growth often begins with simply opening your mind to new ideas. Through this, Oprah proved something she had lived her entire life. When you share what truly matters to you, the world has a way of leaning in to listen. As the late 1990s unfolded, Oprah stood at a point where her voice carried weight far beyond the talk show stage. She began using that influence to bring powerful stories to life through film and television production. One of her earliest triumphs in this new chapter was her involvement in Beloved, the ambitious 1998 adaptation of Toni Morrison's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. Though the film faced mixed reviews, Oprah's commitment to telling complex, emotional, and historically important stories was undeniable. She wasn't chasing easy wins, she was willing to take risks for the sake of truth. In the years that followed, she nurtured projects that aligned with her vision of meaningful storytelling. Her production arm helped bring to television acclaimed miniseries and movies that shone light on resilience, injustice, and the human spirit. She understood that media had the power not just to entertain, but to deepen empathy. Oprah also began forging partnerships with some of the most talented actors, directors, and writers of her time. By surrounding herself with people who shared her standards and values, she amplified the reach of her work while protecting its authenticity. It was a reminder that the right collaborators don't just add to your vision, they help it take shape in ways you couldn't achieve alone. Through these ventures, Oprah wasn't simply expanding her career, she was expanding the cultural conversation. She proved that success isn't about doing more of the same. It's about daring to enter new arenas where your voice can matter. In choosing projects that challenged audiences to think differently, she showed that the most enduring influence comes from marrying ambition with purpose. By the early 2000s, Oprah was no longer just a talk show host. She was an institution. Her name carried weight across industries, from media to publishing, from business to social impact. She had built not just a show, but an empire. Harpo Studios was producing award-winning content. Her magazine was thriving, and her ventures in publishing, film, and education were shaping culture far beyond television screens. But what truly cemented her legacy was not just scale, it was depth. She had managed to maintain authenticity in an industry where it's often the first thing sacrificed. In a world obsessed with speed, she chose intention. In a market ruled by competition, she chose collaboration. People trusted her because she never treated influence as a tool for self-promotion, but as a platform for elevation. Her work reminded people that success isn't measured solely by how much you accumulate, but by how many doors you open for others. That a brand built on trust and empathy is more resilient than one built on trend and hype. That the most powerful currency you can earn is not money, but the ability to move hearts and minds. Even as she became one of the most powerful women in the world, she never lost sight of the simple acts that defined her early days: listening without judgment, giving without expectation, and showing up fully in each moment. Those choices, made again and again over decades, created a ripple effect no chart could measure. Oprah's story shows that real influence is slow-cooked, not microwaved. It's the result of showing up consistently, keeping your word, and doing the hard, often invisible work when no one is watching. She proved that you can be both ambitious and kind, both visionary and grounded. And perhaps that is why her presence endures, because she built something far more lasting than a career. She built a life that others could see themselves in, and in doing so, gave people permission to dream bigger, act braver, and live more fully. As the rain continues to fall outside your window tonight, remember that the story you are writing is not just about what you achieve, but about who you become in the process. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope that by now your mind is calm, your heart is light, and you are already drifting into sleep, or perhaps already asleep. From here on, you'll hear only the soothing sound of rain, guiding you deeper into rest. Sweet dreams, dreamer. May tomorrow bring you peace, purpose, and inspiration.